All right, we are coming back, folks. Thanks for the quick break. All right. Sounds like we've got everything working again, so thanks for your patience on that. We're going to continue this Nerdfest with a talk on Rocky Mountain ham network operations. It's kind of similar to Tristan's talk about how we can use IP over ham radio. And this is kind of a rehash of last month's talk by John and Willem, which was solving problems with IPv4. But this will get you to dip your toes in the subject matter, and if you are interested in what I'm talking about, then you can go back and watch last month's talk and get more details into this. My name is Chris Keller, K0SWE. I've been in ham radio for about, 4 years now. Active in Aries, active in RMHAM. Just love experimenting with stuff. All right, so let's take a quick introduction of this niche within ham radio. High-speed multimedia is apparently the term of art for this. I actually hadn't heard of this until I started researching this, but this is the general idea with high-speed multimedia is, can we take consumer or commercial networking gear and co-opt it for ham radio purposes? And so it started probably many years ago with the Linksys, what is this, WRT54G. We got someone who remembers this exact piece of equipment. It's a venerable thing. Can we take these things and, modify the firmware so that they, normally they talk on Wi-Fi frequencies, but there's ham radio frequencies directly adjacent. Can we nudge them over and just get them to talk on our frequencies? Once we do that, we have the ability to add amplifiers, which you can't do on regular Wi-Fi. You can add high gain antennas, which you're not supposed to do on Wi-Fi. And so we can use this existing equipment more flexibly than otherwise we could. And so there are lots of examples out in the wild of this. There's broadband HamNet, there's Eridan, there's a non-ham radio example called NYC Mesh. And NYC Mesh is basically a community project where people are taking their internet connection that they pay for and they are opening it up to a mesh network of just anybody who wants to connect. And so if you live in New York City, potentially you don't need to pay for your own ISP. You just share the community's internet connections. So it's kind of cool. A lot of these examples are mesh networking technology. This lends itself to ham radio use for a number of reasons. It's easy for an individual ham to set up their own station and run it autonomously, run it the way they want. It sort of auto-configures and joins the rest of the network kind of seamlessly. It's a general purpose network. No one person has a say over what's going to run over this mesh network. By the same token, there's no one person who says, this is allowed, this is not allowed. And any of these nodes can drop out at any time for any reason because they're run by individuals. So there's no availability guarantees. You can't guarantee that what works today is going to work tomorrow. So this is mesh networking in general. And I bring this up because a lot of these ham radio over Wi-Fi router projects are like this. But we're going to switch over to talking about the RMHAM network, which is not a mesh network for a number of reasons. But first, let's introduce the RMHAM network. What the heck is this? We have 137 backbone sites. This is not including, people's QTH sites that link into this. This is not including commercial sites. This is just the backbone. We got coverage, as you can see from the map, from northern Wyoming to southern New Mexico. We've got coverage from Grand Junction to Burlington. This thing is pretty wide area. This network is centrally managed by us, RMHAM, plus our partner organizations. And we have, this has set out with the purpose that this is going to be for emergency communications purposes. We do some limited experimentation, but it's not available for just anyone to jump on and do whatever they want. We limit it, we try and limit it to certain purposes, which we try and make sure that the network is available for emergency communications first and foremost.
We are not an ISP provider.
We are not an ISP provider. The RMHAM network, so the things that we do run over the RMHAM network are things like Colorado Connection, Fun Machine, our own DMR network. We run all of these linked repeater systems, and we consider these important to be up all the time in emergency situations. And so these are the kinds of traffic that we prioritize. This also gives us the nice warm fuzzies that ham radio is still running over ham radio all the time. It feels like kind of a cop-out when, a linked repeater system is running over public internet. Warm fuzzies that ham radio is still ham radio. I missed several clubs on here. So we've got Aurora, we've got Northern Colorado, we've got Longmont, Ski Country. So we've got a ton of these clubs and clients that are running over the network. So diving into the technology that we're using for the network, it's mostly MikroTik networking hardware. It happens to be, more cost effective than equivalent Cisco or Ubiquiti equipment that we could buy. Something that shocked me when I came onto the team was we use static private IP assignments for everything. We don't really do much auto configuration of anything. That is because we want it to stay up and running all the time. We are not willing to take the downtime associated with auto configuration of stuff. And so static private IP assignments are a pain to manage, but really you only have to do it once. It's more robust, and it just stays up instead of, having to do DHCP to, a device comes up and it's trying to reach out over the network to find out, hey, what's my address? Well, it may not be able to find that out if if the other side is down for some reason. So we do use static IP assignments for everything. Within the last, is it 5 or 6 years we've been using OSPF? That was before my time, but it was relatively recently. And so OSPF makes sure that changes in the networks, if one of our microwave radios gets zapped by lightning, then we can try and route around that problem. And so OSPF helps us do that automatically without having to emergency go in and try and fix things by hand. And the other thing that we have that would not work well with these auto configuration Eridan systems is we've got long microwave links. We've got 50-mile microwave links, and John could probably, do you remember what the longest one we have might be? 87? These things are so long that we can't use just plain 802.11. That's the standard Wi-Fi protocol at the data link layer. But 802.11 will time out just because the propagation delay is so long. 41 miles. Is the upper limit for 802.11 links. And so if we were trying to do this with Eridan, these long links just would not work. They just wouldn't, they would never connect. We've got about 10 of us, and I consider myself probably the lowest on the totem pole, but we've got about 10 of us that know how to run the network. We've got so many, we've got more than 100 sites, we've got more than 300 devices spread out all over the place. How the heck do we keep track of all this stuff? That's what the remainder of this talk is going to be about. So there's a number of tools that we use for keeping track of anything. One of them is Observium. This is a commercial software product. I think probably we get a nonprofit deal on more than just the free version. So we get some additional functionality. They do have a free version, but it's, you know, it's not super powerful. Obviously, they'd like to make some kind of money on it. What's great about Observium is it is connected to most of the devices on the network, and it can pull information about the health of each device, how much data is passing through a router over which port. It keeps track of sensors, so temperatures and fan speeds, and if we have a mountaintop site where one of the fans craps out, then we will find out about that through Observium rather than finding out about it, you know, next summer when we get up to that mountaintop site. And you know, we often hear these devices complaining when the mountaintop sites get, you know, into negative degrees. We get alerts all the time about, hey, it's really cold up here. And that's the other great thing about Observium is you can define alerts within the system that, you know, if there's a metric that is out of whack, if we're sending too much data or too little data, or you know, latency is too high, latency is suspiciously low, then we find out about that. You know, we get alerts on our device, our phones and stuff. Tristan?
Yeah, can you tell us more about how Observium collects data from the devices?
So it's got, this is where my knowledge gets a little bit fuzzier, but Observium has capabilities where it can log into, for example, the MikroTik networking gear, and it can use you know, the APIs that the MikroTik provides to pull information off of that. SNMP? All right, so it's using what is that, Simple Network Management Protocol. So a lot of these devices have, you know, a standard protocol, SNMP, that every device speaks in order to be able to pull information like that. And I assume there's some devices where we can't do that. For example, I know the repeaters that we keep track of, a lot of those do not talk SNMP, and so the only thing we can do with those is to ping them. And Joey set something up recently that just kind of pings stuff to make sure it's still there. So that's that. Another tool that we have at our disposal is DevDB, which is mostly maintained by Willem. But this is a homegrown software tool that models the way the network is supposed to look. And so we can add a device in here and say, okay, this device probably should have network ports that connect over to here and over to here. And if the device doesn't have network ports that look like that, then we probably have a problem somewhere. And so, this is sort of our source of truth for what's supposed to be on the network, what it's supposed to be connected to, and helps us detect when the things are out of whack. Beyond just modeling the network, we've got tools in there such as the plugs out test. You start with a particular device and you say, okay, it should be connected here, and it should be connected here, and it should be connected here. And, starts from the plugs of this device and works its way out. Willem, do you want to add more on that?
Yeah, the plugs out test you should run before you leave the site to make sure you didn't unplug something.
Right. We can also check the OSPF configuration on a particular device to make sure that, as changes happen in the network, that it's going to get appropriate updates. Check firewall configuration. Every one of these devices should be blocking traffic from China or, whatnot. We don't want these things hacked into as much as we can prevent it. Check device configuration, update sensor limits. So, I talked about these temperature and fan speeds. We don't always want to know about every fan that's just gone a little bit slow. And so, so we have, DevDB gives us the ability to adjust those sensor limits when things are too noisy.
Chris, a question from the net or from the Zoom.
Yeah.
Going back to the SNMP topic, are there any custom MIBs that have been written for any of the devices on the network?
We're using stock.
We're using stock is the answer I'm getting.
Yeah, basically what you pay for Observium is they keep those MIBs up to date all the time. So they do a great job of coming up with how to translate those things. The thing that they suck at is setting reasonable limits for the sensors.
Which is why we do that in DevDB instead. Another tool at our disposal, SmokePing. So you've got microwave devices at either end of a link, and you want to know how good is the quality of this link over time. And so SmokePing can track over time how good is this link. Are we getting noise throughout the day? Do we have some sort of interference that's only occurring at certain hours? John, you kind of look like you have something. No? Okay.
See the bump there? That often means the routes have changed.
Okay.
I don't think that happened in this case, but often when there's like low latency for a long time and suddenly the latency goes high, it's probably because you had to fail over to commercial internet because one of the microwave links were down.
Makes sense. Yeah, and so we'd like to be able to know, most of these microwave links have some sort of commercial backup. And so if the microwave link fails, then we'll route over commercial internet. And we'd like to know when that happens. And so SmokePing gives us one clue of when that happens.
Yeah, Chris, you happen to pick three of my devices. It's true, if you look at the bumps on the ones at El Dorado, that is when it failed over to commercial internet. The one on West Creek is over our backbone. You can see how stable the latencies are running straight across our backbone.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will say, running over the microwave, we're going direct to each other. We don't have to cross through somebody's data center, so it's pretty reliable. Tristan?
Yeah, how often does this happen?
How often do failovers to commercial happen?
Either commercial or USPF routes reconverging?
We had a situation yesterday at Almagre Mountain, and it failed 10 times between 8 a.m. and noon. We didn't see it, but we got 10 alerts. It happens, Almagre happens to be a really bad location for power. There is I think it's about 7,000 feet of primary line running on the surface of the mountain in conduit all the way up the side of the hill to the site. Yeah, there's a lot of lightning divots in the side of that wire, so it's probably not the most reliable power on the planet. And we haven't been to that site, I think, in about 4 years now. And well, you've been there, Mike. We haven't been there, and you can't carry those batteries on your bike. So we need to get some new batteries to that location to stabilize the power through those power hits. But generally, when we see the power, or when the hits, they don't actually register to the end user because OSPF fails enough, quickly enough that it heals the network before you even know it.
Yeah, but
batteries, but we need 6 very strong individuals and a large dog to get them to the site.
all right. But the answer to the question is, somewhere within the network, we have commercial failovers pretty often. And we try to minimize those, but, microwave links are exposed to the elements, and so we probably
Don't see failures in the network except for maybe once a month. Something will happen somewhere that causes things to go down. Most of our backbone sites are on good batteries, and unrecoverable failures very seldom ever happen. We might get one a year, and if we get that, in most places there's a way to route around it on microwave. There's a lot of loops in the network.
How often do you have to deal with often do you have to deal with negative link margin and rain fade or moisture attenuation or anything like
We
that?
don't ever deal with negative link margin. Everything is between 40 and 50 dB of signal to noise on the network, so we rarely ever see fades.
Great.
Willem has a 60 gig from his house that shoots up to Squaw. It's 4 miles long, and if we get a really heavy rainstorm, that 60 gig will go down. But there's microwave around that. So if it does fail, it's only going to be failed for a short amount of time, and it failed to microwave anyway, so really doesn't matter at that point. You'll never notice.
Yeah, that's great.
Given the size of our network, OSPF takes about 5 seconds to converge. So it's typically just a little blip.
All right, so continuous ping helps us look at latencies, but kind of on a wider overview basis. So continuous ping runs from one particular spot. It tries to connect to everything else in the network, or many, many other devices. And so each row in this screenshot is one other device in the network. And based on the coloring and based on the numbers, you can see how good a quality that link is, what the latency is. And so a lot of these...
Quite read line 17.
I'll see if I can zoom that in for you. Thanks, Willem. But yeah, the greens you can see are very stable, very fast links. Blue starts to get a little bit slower.
Blue is less than 10 milliseconds, green is less than 100.
Oh, it's the other way around. Okay.
And the red that's missing there in that middle is that dropped for about 3 seconds.
Right. One of the things we also run on the network is called RANCID, really awesome new Cisco config differ. Basically, this just takes backups of every device configuration and dumps them somewhere. And it helps us to keep track of changes over time to device configurations. So we can tell when somebody changed something. Or
Makes our life really easy. If we take a lightning strike on a router, there's a config written every night. Sometime overnight, it grabs a snapshot of it, and we can write it back into the router and have it back up within minutes.
Right. Instead of having to remember everything and rebuild the router config from scratch. That gets to be a pain. Yeah, MikroTik does have RANCID support. And the alerting mechanism that most of us use is just a Telegram group. We take the stuff that comes out of Observium and a couple of other systems, and we route it into just a Telegram chat room that the 15 of us are in, and so we keep up to date with things there, and we're also able to coordinate when we have issues. We can just chat through Telegram and be able to talk to each other that way. I've been meaning to suggest maybe we should do like IRC that runs on the network. I don't know if it matters.
Have to sell Joey on that.
Yeah. Joey is the gatekeeper there. All right, and so I think this is one of the last things I'm talking about, but we have a NetLab that Willem built. This is a small-scale model of the network that fits all on one giant whiteboard, and it's a bunch of low-cost MikroTik devices, and we can model a largish portion of the backbone this way. And so my understanding is this is the way that OSPF was tested, so that we knew how things would react when they failed over. And we're currently doing some testing with Router OS 7 using the NetLab. And so this gives us a pretty large-scale test when we're trying to change things.
There is some tricks that Willem found out, and he built this. It kind of looked like a yard sale on his conference table. He since put it on a nice whiteboard, but we run a lot of VPNs between radio sites across the commercial internet, and adding VPN to OSPF is a massive nightmare. And there's a lot of tricks associated with that he had to actually spend his own money and go to a MikroTik conference here in town and ask some of the guys that actually understand how this stuff works. And he figured out how to do it, and it's been the single biggest help in our whole network.
Yeah, so this has been a great asset.
All the red wires are VPNs, all the purple wires are microwave.
Yeah, so it's nice to be able to test things here without taking down the real network.
It's also a great tool.
Yes. Last slide I've got here, problems that we've yet to solve. It'd be nice to have some kind of single sign-on system. Right now, a lot of our devices have, individual username and password for everything. RANCID helps a little bit with this. We've got, a single username and password that we can use for at least the MikroTik devices, but we've still got a lot of servers sprinkled all over the place.
Some of the hardware that we use is amateur radio quality hardware, like the power gates. Who makes those things? That's made by
West Mountain Radio?
West Mountain Radio. They don't understand radius, and they don't understand SNMP, and they're not terribly interested in supporting it. So it really limits our ability to try to do single sign-on, and we're still trying to figure out how to solve some of those.
Yeah, and, some of that's just, it is what it is, but it'd be nice if we could get closer to single sign-on. That's all I've got prepared. Any other questions at this point? Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.